Today's podcast sponsor is MailStore. MailStore is the email archiving software for Microsoft Office 365 and Exchange that enables you to automatically prune the mailbox sizes of your users, keep a perfect copy in case of accidental deletion or malware attack, and it's also great for compliance such as GDPR. Available for servers or as a multi-tenant service provider edition version that you can host yourself as an MSP, head on over to mailstore.co.uk/TubbTalk for an incredible introductory offer just for TubbTalk listeners and for a free 30-day trial.
You're listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners, with our featured conversation with Richard Tubb and Daniel Welling of Welling MSP. My name is Jeff Nicholson, and this podcast is all about helping you grow your IT business. In this episode, Richard talks with Daniel Welling. Having started out in IT sales in 1995 before running his own business, Daniel works with MSPs to add value through mentorship and consulting. You'll hear about how Daniel built and sold his MSP business, why his recruitment firm isn't like the usual agencies companies deal with, and why using a third party can help MSPs find the right employees. This episode was recorded between Richard at home in Newcastle upon Tyne and Daniel in his office in Marlowe. And now, without further ado, here's Richard Tubb talking with Daniel Welling.
Hi folks, Richard Tubb here with another interview, and I'm joined today by Daniel Welling of Welling MSP, who are a specialist recruiter for the managed service provider, value-added reseller and IT support business community here in the UK. Now, Daniel himself is very familiar with the IT industry, having over 23 years commercial IT experience, including co-founding, developing and selling his own MSP business. Daniel, welcome to TubbTalk.
Hello.
And whereabouts in the world do we find you today, Daniel?
So I am in not so sunny Marlowe today, located to the west of London on the River Thames.
I'm sat here in the studio garage here in Newcastle upon Tyne. So yeah, I've got the door closed. But let's jump straight in and let's start with your background. I've already alluded to the fact you've got a lot of experience in the IT industry, specifically with MSPs. What did your journey look like? Where did you come from?
So I guess by trade, I'm a salesperson. My first sales role was in 1995. The role was selling product over the phone. I remember getting orders faxed across to me, and well, actually faxed in quotes. I remember my first email experience. And yeah, it seems like all of 23 years ago. But yeah, so started out selling IT at the time for what was called a value-added reseller, and that was network servers, Windows 3.11 on the desktop. Fond memories looking back, so made some money doing that, as I think all of us involved in the industry at that time and before did, always had in my mind that I wanted to be a business owner. Found the opportunity 2002 to start a business at the time, not on my own. My next door neighbour, who was also a customer and a friend, was at a similar point in his background, and so he was an IT manager for a company, and together we thought we had technical and sales, and that was what we needed to found a business. So that's how we started back in 2002. We sold the business in 2014, and that was a trade sale. Then after that, after a break away from IT, I actually went back to work for the acquirer, held a couple of roles with them, directorship and eventually a consultancy role. And it was during that time that I actually discovered the MSP community, which I'd really not had any involvement with whilst being an MSP business owner, and only when I had the time did I discover the community, and just realised the sheer volume of MSPs in the market, and that got me to thinking about how I could work with the MSP market, and what their needs were, what my needs were when I was running a business, and in fact my time with the acquirer as well. So yeah, that's really what's led me to where I am today.
Yeah, and I want to talk specifically about recruitment going forward. This is going to be a hot topic for a lot of people listening to this. But there's a couple of things I want to pick up on just on what you said about your experience there. First of all, I think there's going to be a number of listeners get a kick out of hearing mentions of NetWare and fax machines. Do you know, I actually had somebody ask me whether I had a fax number the other day. You can guess what my response to that was. I was like, no, it's not 1990. We don't use faxes anymore. Yeah, but the second one, and joking aside, you talked about you weren't aware of the MSP community. That's not unusual. Why do you think an MSP, and you grew a big MSP, got it out there, very, very successful? How can this whole community, and there's a number of different communities. I think you and I met at was it a network group meeting? It might have been at the time.
Yes.
CompTIA. How do you think these bigger MSPs aren't able to become aware of the MSP community out there?
I think it's a time and an awareness issue. If we pick time first of all, unless it's a customer meeting or recruiting someone or writing a proposal or closing a piece of business, everything else is secondary when you're at the coalface. The thought of taking a day out of your schedule and going to a CompTIA event, mixing with the competition, giving away trade secrets, all of those I guess emotions were I think what was holding me back from being involved in the community before, and then an awareness thing. I might hear about an event, but I'm busy, and then when I've got time or I'm not so busy, I've then forgotten about the event or that group. So I think just as marketing experts would tell us, there's 7 times for a message to stick. So CompTIA has probably been the biggest kept secret in the marketplace. CompTIA need to have communicated to me 7 times before it would click for me that it was something I should be investing my time in. So yeah, I think it's a timing thing, and I think that's true of a lot of MSPs. They start out in survival mode, and it's all about bringing the money in. Then there's an awareness that the business needs to be built to operate without them being involved day to day, and I guess it's part of the evolvement of the business and the MSP owners' perception of what they should be spending their time on.
Yeah, but clearly you've got value out of being involved in the MSP community since you've become aware of it. So I've seen you at events, and you've picked up a lot of business with your current business out of that as well. What would your message be to any MSPs who perhaps stumbling across this podcast or listening have never been to any events like CompTIA or Network Group or any of the user groups? What would your message to them be now, knowing what you know?
Get out there and invest the time. Just the same as you would go networking, prospecting for professional connections that you would hope would lead to new customers or new opportunities there. Do the same within the industry. like all of these things, so there's a balance that has to be applied. So maybe set yourself a KPI of doing 3 events a year in your first year, and there are free CompTIA events, meetings that you could go to. So you could go to one CompTIA event, you could go to the event that is in September, the Managed Service Hosting Service Summit in Central London, and I think that the key thing about going to those events is not only will other MSPs be in the room that you'll find a lot more approachable than you imagine they might be, but you'll also find a concentration of the vendors. It's difficult to keep abreast of the market. Thankfully, we have some great content that you're creating that condenses down some of the key messages that are out there for MSPs to consider. But nothing beats being in a room and being able to go and see 2 or 3 different business continuity vendors, and doing a comparison there and then of what they can offer and where the opportunities are for you and for your clients. So that in itself, is the payback, let alone the tidbit that you might pick up from another MSP, but also the sense of you're not in it alone. It can become an onerous thing running a business. It's very lonely at the top, as they say. Even if you're fortunate enough to be in a management team that has a number of members, it's still always good to get outside perspective and just know that you're not doing all of this on your own.
Great advice, and certainly I've gone on record more than once but saying how good the community has been to me, how much I've got from it, and one of the reasons I do the podcast now is to try to give back. But let's get back to recruitment then. So you've shared a little bit of your story, your MSP journey, and now you're running a recruitment business that specialises for the MSP industry. Before we talk about recruitment in depth, I'm intrigued. What was your primary motivation towards starting a recruitment business?
So I guess since I'm no longer actively running an MSP business, I do actually really enjoy the space, and wanted to find a way to continue to work with MSPs and add value, ultimately solving problems that others aren't. And I guess if you talk to most MSPs, their top 2 considerations that are holding back the growth of their business are more customers and more staff. Of course, there are lots of tools that help with automation that reduces the number of staff needed or the effectiveness from the staff that you have. But fundamentally, what MSPs sell is the relationship between them and the customer, and it's people that provide that. So I know when I was looking to grow, I'd always either have not enough staff or not enough customers, and I guess the trick was to narrow the gap between those two challenges. So yeah, adding value, solving a problem that others weren't. I did some research, couldn't find anyone that specifically specialised in recruiting for the MSP space. Plenty of IT recruiters, but recruiting for a contractor to go and sit at a help desk at a bank in the city is a very, very different skill set to a multi-client, multi-SME client, or multi-type of client environment that MSPs deal with, putting the phone down to a 20-user network problem with email and picking up the phone to a 100-user network remote connectivity problem and being able to jump from environment to environment, not only at the technical but at the commercial level as well. So yeah, particular type of person thrives working in an MSP environment and enjoys the diversity. For others, they wouldn't enjoy it and they wouldn't flourish. Matching the person with the environment is absolutely key. And felt that there was a gap there that needed to be filled.
And there's definitely a gap in the market. My own background is one, I started out my career working in corporate IT, working for organizations like Serco and Ernst & Young, and working on the help desk there is a completely different thing, isn't it, from working on an MSP help desk. In fact, I've seen corporate IT people who have gone into the MSP world and not lasted very long because their minds have just been absolutely blown by the number of things that an MSP help desk engineer has to juggle around. So there's definitely a gap in the market there. But before we go on, we've got to address the elephant in the room here, Daniel, and that's to do with the recruitment industry as a whole. It's fair to say it's got a pretty poor image, shady practices, slimy recruitment agents. It's not a well thought of industry at all. Why did you choose to start an MSP focused recruitment agency in what I can only describe as very shark infested waters?
One of my first thoughts, really. I guess it was either this or a state agency. Would have been the other way to go. I guess some of that answer is in what I've already said about the specialisation, getting down to the real niche of what an MSP requires from their people. Another thing that puts MSPs off working with recruiters is the commercial implications of the fee structure and the risk balance. So, paying a percentage of the salary as a lump fee that's due normally within the first month or 2 months of employment, and I guess not knowing if that new person is gonna last the distance, it's a big risk. And the other issue is that fee structure is totally opposite to most MSPs' cash flow profiles. So we've all moved from big chunks of money in a project sense to smaller amounts of money spread month to month. So effectively, the commercial model I've employed is one that matches the MSP's cash flow requirements and risk profile. To briefly explain, it's a percentage of monthly salary for up to the first 24 months of employment. Sharing the risk that the employee will last the distance, but also sharing the commercial implication of taking on the extra overhead of the extra salary, the extra beak in the nest that needs to be fed every month is bad enough without a $4 or $5 grand fee that's due 8 weeks after they start. So.
And that's fairly unique, isn't it, within not just the MSP industry, but within the wider recruitment industry as well. So have you found that's a massive differentiator for you?
Yeah, very much so. I believe that there are some niche areas of recruitment that do employ the same or a similar model, and those. And I guess one of the ways I've looked at delivering this service is with a partner recruitment agency. So effectively, providing their recruitment consultants the guidance on the type of person, what the MSP is looking for, and almost consulting with them to impart the knowledge and experience that I have, but using their expertise in the actual recruitment process, which we'll go on to talk about in a moment. But the key barrier to working with partner recruitment consultants is they already get business where there's an upfront fee. So why would they take the risk? Of course, my view is that I'm actually growing the market because the MSPs that I will work with probably at the moment don't use recruiters for all of the reasons we've already mentioned, and therefore they lose the advantage of being able to recruit people faster and with less impact to their own time and an efficiency of the recruitment process. So to cover that off in a more succinct fashion, the reason MSPs don't use recruiters is the fee, is the issue with specialisation and knowledge of the candidates that an MSP requires, and those two combined mean that the MSP will go and try and recruit themselves, and unfortunately, self-recruiting can take a lot longer and potentially cost more money, subject to the success and the lost or gained opportunity of having that extra person in the business sooner. So that I guess is the reason why MSPs don't tend to use agencies.
Yeah, let's dig a little bit deeper, and specifically on something that you picked up on there. Why would an MSP work with a recruitment agent rather than advertise and hire directly? Is it purely about the time it takes? I guess if I can roll another question into there, how do you, Daniel, attract good quality candidates to fulfill your clients' MSP roles? Because the number one thing I hear from MSP saying is we just don't get candidates of a decent quality come through. I know there's a number of questionnaires, but I guess I'd summarize that by saying, why would an MSP work with a recruitment agent instead of trying to hire directly?
Time and cost, really. It takes time to self identify and reach the candidates. That can be, via a number of methods. You can subscribe to job boards and access their CV libraries. You can look at competitors' websites. You can obviously use LinkedIn, but once you've identified who you want to talk to, you've then got to reach them, and that can obviously take time. Numerous messages, phone calls, etc. And it's that work that I actually have a newfound appreciation for recruiters that I've worked with before, for the volume of activity that goes into presenting a CV for a potential candidate that's been properly vetted, and that candidate has been introduced to the opportunity of working for that MSP as well. So the thing that you can forget quite easily here, being caught up in your own requirement of having an extra member of the team, is the candidates are interviewing you as much as you're interviewing the candidates. So and that process begins with first contact from the recruiter. I have this role and this is the opportunity and this is the location, the salary range, the type of work you'll be doing. They're all questions that candidates will want to know and be engaged with, to help the chance of getting to an eventual placement.
And at the risk of talking yourself out of a job here, which I'm definitely not trying to do, but with your MSP hat on as well, how do MSPs, what can they be doing better to attract good candidates themselves directly?
I think if the MSP is doing a better job generally, then that actually helps the recruiter as well. And by talking about the MSP doing a good job, really begins with that MSP's core values, how how they want to attract and develop the people within their business, to the ultimate benefit of delivering a better service to their customers, and using all of that within their own marketing messages and how they present their business. So website for the MSP, do they talk about culture, do they talk about core values and how that extends through into what they deliver? If they do, then they've probably evolved their thinking about who they want to hire and how they want to develop their people. What do they do in terms of supporting personal development, around support for training, for example, and how do they support the people deal with the pressures of the role? Is there flexible working? Is there time off in lieu? Do they get paid overtime when they're involved in projects? All of those sorts of things. So generally, happy people equals good service level equals happy customers equals growing MSP. So yeah, whatever the MSP can do to present a true representation of what it's going to be like being part of their business, that helps the recruiter from that very first conversation when they disclose who their client is and what the opportunity is for the candidate.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. And the insight that you've given there, I think it's about marketing, really, isn't it? I mean, if you're good at marketing your business, you attract good clients. But what many MSPs overlook is if you're good at marketing your business and delivering good service, you will attract good people to want to work with you as well. So that's fantastic advice. Yeah. I want to talk about something specifically. We've talked a little bit about MSPs attracting the right type of people. What MSPs and maybe it's definitely the IT industry, the wider IT industry is really failing at the moment is attracting women to work in technology. Now, I recently interviewed Melissa Saar. She's a former MSP herself. She now works at IT Glue, an MSP vendor. I asked Melissa what it was like to be a woman working within the man's world of MSP. Melissa's a great success, but she's the exception to the rule. So you're uniquely positioned, Daniel, to see both the employer and the employee side of the story. What can we as an industry do to encourage more women into the tech sector?
Good question, and I would extend the topic to be diversity in the wider sense. I think it's positive messaging from apprenticeship level upwards, and as an industry, I referred earlier to CompTIA, the best kept secret in the market, and CompTIA are championing initiatives around certainly diversity overall, and in fact they have an initiative advancing women in technology. So they're reaching out and delivering those messages. And going back to marketing messages overall, just more messaging positively delivered and consistently delivered. I guess it starts with youngsters at school thinking about what they want to do in terms of a career, STEM subjects, and how those feed into wanting to work with computers in IT overall. So yeah, as an industry, we're all responsible for attracting new people into the market, and yeah, all of our messaging has to be positive and open to attract the best talent, whatever their background.
Yeah, wise words there. So you've been doing this for a little while now. I'm going to put you on the spot, if I may. What's the biggest frustration you experience as an MSP recruitment agency when working with MSP employers?
It's a good question. I think some of the key challenges I've found, urgency, decisiveness, and salary expectations. So I've had a lot of near misses. I've had more near misses than I've had placements so far. And to be fair, some of those near misses in the early days were down to me understanding my role in the process, not as a decision maker, which is of course what I had been before, and some are down to candidates' expectations not being met. But I've had a number of incidences where the client's got to a point with a candidate, they want to make an offer, but they don't, and then the candidate has other opportunities, and they then take that opportunity, and the same extends to the momentum involved from day one of presentation of a CV. If it takes us a week to be able to go back to the candidate and give them some initial feedback, and then another week to arrange a phone call, and then 2 weeks to arrange a face-to-face interview, that's a whole world of time that's transpired, and I guess the same urgency should be applied as if you were courting a new customer, and you wouldn't want to let too much time pass in that process, because other MSPs would be there snapping at your heels and talking to your prospects in the intervening time. So yeah, urgency, decisiveness, and salary expectation is probably the thing that restricts down the pool of available resources or candidates within the process. The natural tendency for an MSP is to want to pay the lowest possible salary, because that means more margin. However, lower salary also means less satisfied employee, higher risk of leaving, but it also means that when you're recruiting, if and we've probably all as MSP owners had this situation where a valued member of the team that's maybe been with us for a fair amount of time, their salary has increased but is not necessarily kept pace with market conditions. They get courted, they get offered another role, they come and hand in their notice, and the MSP owner at that point counters, and knowing that it will cost them X amount of time, disruption, cash to replace them, it makes more sense just to pay them a little bit extra money. The problem is that then takes someone potentially undervalued to being overvalued, and then when they then move on, which they will at some point, their expectation is then that much higher. So it's a dangerous cycle to counter offer, because for an industry effect, it's elevating the salaries. So having a strategy, I think, that suits your MSP business, but also does the right thing in the industry, is probably again one of those balance topics that just consideration needs to be given to begin with, in terms of setting the right window that is affordable, and that will open up that talent that has been overpaid potentially at another MSP, but you value their experience nonetheless, and therefore you've worked out that you can afford to pay that salary, maybe 5, 10, 20% more than your instinct tells you that you should be able to pay for that person.
So we're coming to the end of our time, but I can't resist asking at this point, if you could wave a magic wand, and based on the work that you've done in both the recruitment industry and the MSP industry, how would you want people to feel about recruitment agents going forward? And I say magic wand because we know this is going to be, if I was to call it an uphill struggle, I'd be being generous, wouldn't I? But,
yeah, I think so. I think probably recognising the value and respecting what recruiters do. Just as an MSP will want to be able to demonstrate to their client the value in engaging with them and following an appropriate process at an appropriate pace and then to manage their clients. The same with any professional service that effectively you are outsourcing the search and selection of talent into your business. So it's recognising that there's a value there, working with the recruiter, providing feedback so they can refine what it is they're proposing in terms of candidates, just openness throughout. So yeah, they the same principles you'd employ in any area of your business and relationships with partners.
Now, can't let you go also without acknowledging the fact that you've got a ton of experience with the MSP industry. Whilst you're focusing on the recruitment side of things at the moment, you do offer your experience in the commercial side of business to other MSPs. So the things that spring to mind, I know you've done some work on mergers and acquisitions specifically. What have you worked on exciting lately?
To be honest, I'm excited by the level of opportunity out there overall. The MSP space is continually maturing, and there's an acceleration, in my view, that will happen to consolidation within the marketplace. Not least for the natural cycle of evolution. There's people out there in their 40s that started a business 20 years ago that today we call an MSP, and today they want to be thinking about stepping back, retiring. So I think there's an awful lot of businesses at that level that will be looking to consolidate, but the marketplace as a whole is so well served now with tools and technologies. RMM and PSA were phrases we just didn't have, even a few years ago, and so the facilities to start an MSP business are there, and it's probably the best time we've ever had to start an MSP. So I think there's lots of new shoots there as well, and the marketplace itself does lend itself to some of the disparate nature, because ultimately a lot of what we do is relationship driven, and individual business owners, teams, companies can only foster so many relationships, and therefore you'll end up with pockets of customers and MSPs, I think. But yeah, there's so much opportunity in the marketplace. Obviously, I can't tell you about any specific deals I've been working on, but there's a lot of activity, and this could perhaps even be the topic for another TubbTalk.
I think so. Yeah,
around some of the considerations for selling a business. As in a lot of ways, that's why a lot of MSPs do start in business. Ultimately, they're working towards an exit. But don't think about the exit until they're looking to walk out the door, which is of course the wrong time to do it. Just as recruitment should be planned as far in advance as possible, to improve your chances of getting the right opportunities at the right time. So.
Yeah, and I definitely think there's another conversation. You and I have both, built MSPs, sold MSPs, now helping other people to pretty much do the same thing. So I definitely think there's another conversation in there, but we'll save that for another day. For now, if anybody wants to find you online, reach out to you to continue the conversation or to talk about recruitment specifically for their MSP, how would they get in touch with you, Daniel?
So you'll find me on LinkedIn. You'll also find my website at wellingmsp.com. You'll find me very approachable. Happy to share my experiences, and I've got an opinion on most things, which I'm always happy to share as well. Look forward to hopefully carrying on the conversation with some of the listeners from today, and ultimately helping their MSP businesses grow and doing the right thing with supporting the industry as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think there's going to be a single listener to this podcast as an MSP who hasn't got some sort of recruitment challenge. So I would encourage you, reach out to Daniel, get in touch, see if you can get an alternative perspective, because I think there's the one thing that's clear from this interview. Daniel isn't like recruitment agents that you've worked with in the past. He is former MSP, knows what he's talking about, and has got the MSP industry's best interests at heart. So Daniel, I wish you all the best with this. Thanks for coming on and sharing what for me has been absolutely fascinating insight into the recruitment world and your own experience in the MSP industry. Wish you all the best with it. And that's all for now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to speaking to you next time.
Thanks for listening to TubbTalk, the podcast for IT business owners. You can find the show notes and bonus content for this interview, along with dozens of other interviews with IT business leaders, over at www.tubbblog.co.uk. If you enjoyed this podcast, we'd really appreciate you rating and reviewing the show over at iTunes. It helps the show reach new listeners. Tune in for our next episode when Richard speaks to his latest guest for more valuable insights into the world of business and IT. Thanks for listening, and I'll speak with you next episode. Have a great day.
If your clients use Office 365 or Exchange, then I have no doubt you come across those with ridiculously large mailboxes, the users who accidentally delete messages and then have no way of getting them back, and also some who you just know are going to click a message that's going to bring ransomware their way. MailStore is the email archiving software that enables businesses to keep a perfect, tamper-proof, encrypted and deduplicated copy of all their messages that's instantly available via Outlook or via a responsive web interface. Available as a free 30-day trial and as both a server edition and a service provider edition that you can host centrally on your own hardware to service all of your clients, MailStore and UK Disti Zen Software have a limited introductory offer for TubbTalk listeners that's not to be missed. Head on over to mailstore.co.uk/TubbTalk for details.